The emergency light blinked red. Once. Twice. Then it stayed on. Inside JVA Werl Prison, that light meant only one thing. Something had gone wrong. Very wrong. A guard stood frozen in the hallway, staring at a locked door that was no longer fully locked. Inside that section of the prison were men serving life sentences. Men labeled high risk. Men who were never supposed to be close to each other without control. But now, control was slipping. An alarm finally screamed through the building. Doors slammed shut across the prison. Guards ran. Radios crackled with confused voices. Then came the discovery. One inmate was badly hurt. Another was missing from his assigned area. And a security log showed activity that no one could explain. Officials would later call it a mysterious incident. Inside the prison, people whispered a different word. Failure. And as JVA Werl went into full lockdown, one question spread through the walls faster than the alarms ever could. How did a prison built to hold Germany's most dangerous offenders lose control for even one moment? Long before that night, JVA Werl had already earned its reputation. It was not an ordinary prison. This was where the hardest cases went. Life sentences. Long sentences. High-risk inmates who could not be held just anywhere. Many were transferred from big cities like Berlin, Hamburg, and Cologne. They arrived with long files, heavy histories, and warnings written in bold letters. High risk. Violent past. Strict supervision required. On the outside, JVA Werl looked calm. Clean walls. Watchtowers. Order. On the inside, life moved slowly. That was the low part. Inmates woke up early. They stood for count. They ate in silence. They worked simple jobs. They returned to their cells and waited. Waiting was the hardest part. A man named Mike learned that quickly. Mike was from Los Angeles. He had been living overseas when his case ended badly. Now he was here, inside a prison known for holding men who would never walk free. Mike was not serving life, but he was surrounded by men who were. He kept his head down. He followed rules. He watched. And what he saw made him uneasy. Some inmates were treated differently. Not better in obvious ways. Just differently. Certain men were never challenged. Others were moved away from them. God spoke to them with care, like walking near a sleeping animal. These were the high-risk inmates. Men with nothing left to lose. One of them was a man named Daniel. Daniel rarely spoke. When he did, others listened. He had been transferred in from Berlin after problems at another prison. No one asked what those problems were. They didn't need to. Weeks passed in quiet routine. Low moments filled the days. Boredom. Silence. Long nights staring at the ceiling. Then came the first high moment. It happened in the exercise yard. An argument started between two inmates. Loud words. Angry faces. Guards stepped closer. Then Daniel moved. He didn't run. He didn't shout. He just stood up. The argument stopped. Guards backed off. No punches were thrown. No alarm sounded. But everyone understood what had just happened. Power had spoken without force. After that, things changed. Some inmates avoided the yard at certain times. Others switched work duties. A quiet order began to form, not written anywhere. Mike felt it in the air. Then came the transfers. More high-risk inmates arrived. Files thick with warnings. Stories whispered late at night. One man from Hamburg. One from Cologne. Each brought old rivalries and unfinished problems. The prison tried to separate them. But space was limited. Pressure grew. That pressure led to the first assault. It happened in a hallway with no camera. An inmate was found on the floor. Hurt, but alive. He refused to talk. The official report said inmate conflict. Inside, everyone knew it was planned. A test. Guards responded with more checks. More rules. More lockdowns. That was another low. Long hours in cells. Lights on all night. No answers. But something strange happened during one lockdown. A security door showed signs of being opened, then closed again. No alarm. No record. No explanation. The report called it a system error. Inmates whispered again. This place isn't as tight as they think. Mike tried to ignore it. Until the night everything came together. The night of the red light. It started like any other night. Count. Lights dimmed. Doors locked. Mike lay on his bunk, half asleep. Then he heard footsteps. Slow. Careful. Then a metal sound. A door opening that should not open. Mike sat up. His heart pounded as voices moved through the section. Calm voices. Confident voices. Then silence. Moments later, alarms exploded through the prison. Lights snapped on. Doors slammed shut. Guards ran past Mike's cell, shouting into radios. He saw one inmate being rushed down the hall, badly injured. Then he noticed something worse. A section meant to hold only one high-risk inmate was empty. That inmate was Daniel. As the prison locked down and guards searched every corner, Mike realized the truth was bigger than one incident. JVA Werl was not just holding dangerous men. It was struggling to control them. And whatever had just happened behind those walls was far from over.
The lockdown did not end the next morning. It did not end the next day either. Inside JVA Werl, time slowed down even more than usual. Lights stayed on. Doors stayed closed. Guards moved in groups. Radios never went quiet. Daniel was still missing. That fact scared everyone. A high-risk inmate serving a life sentence does not just disappear inside a prison built to stop exactly that. Officials said very little. Guards said nothing at all. Inside the cells, inmates talked anyway. They talked through vents. They talked through walls. They talked with looks when doors briefly opened. The story spread fast. Daniel had not escaped. Daniel had been moved. Daniel had been hidden. No one knew which was true. Mike stayed on his bunk, listening. This was a low moment. No fights. No noise. Just fear. Fear is loud when everything else is quiet. On the third day, Officer James stopped at Mike's cell. James looked tired. His eyes were red. "You keeping out of trouble?" he asked. Mike nodded. James leaned closer to the bars and spoke quietly. "This place was built to hold the worst," he said. "But walls don't stop everything." That was all he said before walking away. The lockdown finally lifted later that night. Life slowly restarted. Meals returned. Work details resumed. Counts continued. But nothing felt normal. Some inmates were moved to different wings. Others were placed alone. A few were taken away and never came back. No explanations. That silence told its own story. Mike noticed something else. Daniel's name was never spoken again. It was like he had never existed. Days passed. Low moments filled them. Men played cards. Some stared at walls. Some prayed. Some stayed quiet because quiet meant survival. Then came the next high. It happened during a work shift in the maintenance area. A sudden shout. A crash. Then alarms. Guards rushed in. An inmate lay on the floor, badly hurt. He was alive, but shaken. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely stand. This time, he spoke. "He was there," the man whispered. "I saw him." "Who?" a guard asked. The inmate swallowed hard. "Daniel." That name hit the prison like thunder. But when guards searched, they found nothing. No Daniel. No trace. No proof. The report later said the inmate was confused. Inside, nobody believed that. The prison responded fast. Another lockdown. Another search. Another failure. Security logs showed doors opening at strange times again. Cameras flickered. Records did not match reality. Someone was changing things. Someone knew the system. This was no longer just about gangs or power. This was about control slipping away piece by piece. Mike began to understand something important. JVA Werl did not become a prison for high-risk inmates by accident. These men were smart, patient, careful. They watched guards the same way guards watched them. And now, someone was proving that even the strongest system had weak spots. That night, Mike heard footsteps again. Soft. Slow. Close. Then a whisper came from the hallway. "Stay where you are." Mike froze. The voice was calm. Not angry. Not rushed. It sounded like someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Moments later, alarm screamed once more. Guards ran. Doors slammed. Lights flashed. But deep inside the prison, Mike already knew the truth. The mysterious incidents were not ending. They were building. And whatever was happening behind the walls of JVA Werl was heading toward something much worse. The prison woke up tired. Not sleepy tired. Scared tired. Inside JVA Werl, everyone felt it. Guards. Inmates. Even the walls seemed tense, like they were listening. Daniel's name was now a shadow. Never spoken loudly. Never written down. But everyone knew he was still part of the prison, even if no one could see him. The searches continued. Dogs were brought in. Storage rooms were opened. Ceilings were checked. Floors were tapped. Nothing. That was the low point. Not knowing is worse than knowing. Mike watched guards argue quietly near the control room. He saw officers checking the same doors again and again, like they no longer trusted what they saw the first time. One guard said something that stuck with Mike. If he wanted to leave, the guard said, we'd know. The other guard shook his head. What if he didn't want to leave? He replied. That question changed everything. Days passed. Routine tried to return, but it failed. High-risk inmates were kept apart. Movements were reduced. Entire sections stayed closed longer than usual. Still, the strange things continued. A light turning on by itself. A door unlocking, then locking again. A camera showing static for no clear reason. Each time, reports were written. Each time, the explanation was the same. Technical issue. Inside, no one believed that anymore. Mike started noticing patterns. The failures always happened at night. Always during shift changes. Always near high-security areas. Someone knew the timing. Someone knew the system. Then came the biggest high moment of all. It happened during a late-night count. Guards moved down the hallway, checking cells one by one. When they reached a secured isolation section, something was wrong. One cell door was open. Inside sat Daniel. Calm. Unhurt. Sitting on his bunk like he had never left. Guards froze. Radios exploded with noise. How is he there? When did he return? Who moved him? Daniel did not resist. He did not speak. He simply stood when told and followed orders. The prison went into full lockdown again. This time, it was different. Officials arrived. Senior staff arrived. Every system was checked at once. Security logs showed something shocking. Daniel had never officially left the prison. According to the system, he had been in custody the entire time. Cells showed movement. Doors showed activity. But his location never changed. On paper, nothing had happened. In reality, everything had. This was the truth behind the mysterious incidents. There was no escape. No outside help. No broken wall. There was a system that could be used without being broken. Someone had learned how to move inside it without leaving fingerprints. The prison released a short statement weeks later. It said there had been internal security concerns and that procedures were under review. No names. No details. No blame. Life inside JVA will slowly return to normal. But normal was no longer trusted. High-risk inmates were watched more closely. Systems were updated. Rules were rewritten. Still, Mike knew something had changed forever. JVA Werl was built to hold the most dangerous men in Germany. And it still did. But the mysterious incidents proved one thing clearly. Even the strongest prison can be tested. Even life sentences do not stop influence. And sometimes, the most dangerous thing behind the walls is not the inmates themselves, but the unanswered question of how much control has already been lost.